Hello my dear friends, you're in the middle of a summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 18th of April of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Ukrainian conflict, and according to information we have, forced deportation of Ukrainian men from Europe is already occurring. They are being returned to the borders of Ukraine where they are met by the recruit officers. That was stated by Deputy Gorbenko. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, emphasized that the number of Ukrainian men who have taken refuge is something we will be working on with Ukraine to limit, because it is crucial that these men are there to help their country. So this statement was made by Merz several days ago when the Russians were attacking the territory of Ukraine with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. Today we received another very interesting article, this time from France. France is deporting 40,000 Ukrainian men of conscription age to their homeland. So as you can see, the mobilization process have started on the territory of Europe. As of now, this is not the mobilization process of the Europeans, of French citizens, of German citizens, or Polish citizens, or something like this. As of now, we see a limited mobilization process of just Ukrainian men of conscription age. But we need to understand that during this period of time, the European countries will receive significant experience in this process, and they will be able to, first of all, to train themselves in this process, and then if it happens and if it is necessary, the European countries will be able to start the mobilization process among the European nations as well, among the civilians of the European countries. So the process has started, and I would like to remind you that according to different numbers, according to different media, there are millions of Ukrainians on the territory of Europe. As of now, France is limited itself just with 40,000 men of conscription age. We don't know the number about people from Germany, but obviously they will see lots of men of conscription age, both from Poland, from Germany, from France, and of course from the United Kingdom, that would be sent back to Ukraine. And these are very big numbers, and this is a very important step that was made by the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, because from one side, he will be able to get maybe 400,000 people that would be mobilized and would be sent to the line of combat contact with the purpose to remove the gap and the shortage in manpower. This is the first thing. And the second thing, this is a very interesting political step from Zelensky, because of course this is something like a big media victory for Zelensky, because with this mobilization of Ukrainians on the territory of Europe, he will be able to show or to give a just to the Ukrainians who are currently located on the territory of Ukraine and who hasn't managed to escape Ukraine when it was possible. So this is probably the purposes of Zelensky of this mobilization of the territory of Europe. And the most important thing, that with the mobilization of the territory of Europe, Zelensky will be able to create a situation when people of Ukraine and men of Ukraine would be satisfied, and there would be less riots or less protests and something like this. But the most important thing, we see that Zelensky needs soldiers, he needs men of conscription age, which means that everything is going to continue. And I would like to remind you that several days ago, during the massive attacks on the territory of Ukraine, Zelensky was traveling through Europe. He was in Germany, he was in France, he was in Spain, he was in Italy, he was in Netherlands, and he was signing lots of agreements. Most likely in coming days, the European Union will unblock 90 billion loan to Ukraine, and this is going to be the beginning of the preparation of another Ukrainian army, which most likely will carry out or conduct the major Ukrainian counter-offensive operation, which is going to take place most likely at the beginning of 2027. And the most important thing, as of the mobilization process on the territory of Europe, and as of the situation with the loan that is going to be unblocked for Ukraine in coming days, we believe that for this money, the European countries will learn this 2027 army of Ukraine that would be used the next year. So now, of course, let's wait and see what is going to happen next. But now we see that the Russians continue their offensive operation along the entire line of combat contact, and during the previous 24 hours we received additional changes on the ground, so let's discuss them. And first, let's talk about the Suma direction, where the map has been adjusted significantly during the previous 24 hours. The Russians, according to information we have, improved their positions in the area of the settlement of Miropolye. So these are the changes on the ground in the area of Miropolye over the next 5 days or 5-6 days. So this is the way how the map has been adjusted since the beginning of the 12th of April of 2026. The Russians established control for more than 60% of the settlement of Miropolye. The Ukrainians currently control the territory in the western part of the settlement along T1901 road. So this territory, the Ukrainians are trying to stay as close as possible to the main evacuation lines, and if everything happens, the Ukrainians would be able to retreat towards the settlement of Zaporizhzhia. And the Ukrainians control, as we can see according to the map, the most southern part of the settlement with the same purposes and due to the same reasons. If bad things happens, the Ukrainians would be able to retreat in the southwestern direction towards the settlement of Mala Rybitsa. So it seems that in coming days, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation most likely will announce complete control over the settlement of Miropolye. Now let's move further to the south in the Krasnopolye direction. This is another settlement in the Suma direction that the Russians are moving to. According to information we have, during the previous days, the Russians improved their position significantly, and these are the changes on the ground that have been recorded since the 12th of April of 2026. As you can see, during this period of time, the Russians have improved their positions significantly. So now let's discuss the latest changes we have, and these are the changes. According to different mappers, the Russians continue infiltration towards the settlement of Mikhailovka from the east, and the Russians continue encircling the settlement of Novodmitrivka from the north and from the northwest. At the same time, we received a video published by pro-Ukrainian sources from the settlement by the name of Taraturine. So this is the video we are talking about, and here we can see Ukrainians, FPV drone operators of the armed forces of Ukraine, that's where attacking positions, forces and units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation through the entire Suma region. As you can see, there are lots of episodes in this video, and several of these episodes, or at least one of these episodes, was geolocated right exactly on the territory of the settlement of Tarutine itself. The Ukrainian FPV drone was attacking Russians right exactly at this point, and based on this video we came to the conclusion that indeed the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the territory. I would like to remind you that several days ago, pro-Ukrainian sources, more precisely on the 16th of April of 2026, pro-Ukrainian sources colored this area as a gray zone or infiltrated area, which means that the Russians, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, managed to break through Ukraine's defense in this area and to improve their positions. And today, 2 days after, we received a video confirming that the Russians have their positions on the territory of the settlement itself. The Russians continue advancing, and most likely from the area of Taraturina, the Russians will attack the settlement of Novodmitrivka also from behind. So we can see that the village of Novodmitrivka was already taken by Russians in pincers, and most likely in coming days the Ukrainians either would be forced to fall back from this area in the western direction, or they would be encircled without any chances for evacuation. So which means, summarizing everything, that the Suma offensive operation is gaining momentum. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kharkiv direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates, and most of them were published right before I started making this video. First of all, today, as we discussed during the previous video, several pro-Russian sources confirmed that the forest, the big forest to the east of the settlement of Volchansk, was captured by the Russians completely. Yesterday we adjusted the map in this area based on different videos and updates, either both of the Minister of Defense and the group of forces north. These territories were colored. As you can see, significant progress was shown. But today, once again, right before I start making the video, we received an update that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over this big forest along the border. So this territory would be colored almost completely before the next video, and we will discuss these updates in details. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources published a video where the Ukrainians were attacking Russians Russians somewhere here between the settlement of Akhrimovka and the Chaykovka. So we will adjust the map and probably we will color the territory like this. So which means that the Russians are about to finish the battle for the bridgehead along the border and for the river of Volcha. Most likely it will take just several days before the Russians finish the battle for the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region, and then the Russians will try to continue their offensive operation with the purpose to establish a strong control on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha, and then using broad front line attack, the Russians will continue offensive operation towards the next defense layer of the northeastern parts of Kharkiv region, towards the settlements of Biely, Kolodets, Nova Alexandrovka, and of course the settlement of Maly Burluk. So it seems that both the Kharkiv, the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, and the Suma region are primary targets and primary directions for the Russians. And of course, this situation forces the Ukrainians to adjust their plans in the Kupyansk direction, where the situation, it seems, has become critical for the armed forces of Ukraine. Lots of sources stated, lots of articles during the previous days signaled that the Ukrainians began major redeployment of their forces from the Kupyansk direction in the direction of the city of Volchansk. And according to these redeployments, major redeployments, it seems that the Ukrainians didn't expect that the Russians are going to attack in the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. Before we continue, just 2 words about the situation. You know that this war, at least this stage of the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, shows that rivers is a major and probably the most important and the strongest defense layer or natural barrier on the territory of Ukraine. So that is why it seems that the Russians indeed decided to improve their position significantly and to take the space between rivers. So we are talking about the river of Oskol and the river of Seversky Donetsk. I believe you can see this territory, these pockets right now in front of your screens. So that is why the Russians decide that this offensive operation could be much more easier in comparison with any other offensive operation. And the most important thing, if Russians are able to take under complete control this space between the rivers, the Russians would be able to enter the Kharkiv direction from behind. So we are talking about this territory, and this configuration and these positions between rivers and this space between rivers would force the Ukrainians to do the most important thing for Russians, to redeploy their, let's say, launching systems, rocket launching systems and drone launching sites deeper inside of the Poltava region. So, and this is exactly what the Russians need, to force the Ukrainians to remove their launching sites as deep as possible and as close as possible to the river of Dnipro. So, when talking about territories, about, I don't know, minerals, rare minerals or something like this, or about population, about maybe economical capabilities of these territories, as I understand, for Russians, from these perspectives, these territories have no values for the Russians. But from the perspective of launching sites, and from the perspectives of security of the city of Belgorod, these territories has primary value for the Russians. So now let's return back and let's continue with the city of Kupyansk. So the Ukrainians are conducting a major regrouping, and the Russians decided to use this advantageous situation, and we start receiving reports that the Russians improved their position significantly on the western bank of the river Oskol, on the territory of the western Kupyansk. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. Russian positions were recorded in the most southwestern part of the settlement. Here we can see a video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in the area of the Yubileyny micro district. And it seems that we believe that the Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups entered this territory just with one purpose: to block the main supply lines. So there is a road, as you can see, N26, that Ukrainians at least used or had possibilities to use to bring additional reinforcements and reserves in the southwestern parts of the city of Kupyansk. But it seems that now this route was blocked by the Russians from the Yubileyny micro district. At least the Russians maybe will not be able to hold these positions for a very long period of time, but at least the Russians may win some time and disrupt logistics, while the Russians are trying to improve their positions in the central, northern, and the northwestern parts. And according to different sources, the Russians managed to do this. So these are the changes on the ground that were provided by different pro-Russian sources. We have added additional gray zone in this area until additional clarification of the situation. So now let's move further and let's talk about the Sloviansk, Konstantinovka directions. During the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The only thing we have added the citadel, the Nikolaevka citadel. This territory, this is something like a small Ugledar high-rise building area, lots of buildings, multi-story buildings, and it seems that the Ukrainians will rely their last defense belt right exactly in this area, and they will try to hold this Nikolaevka citadel for as long as possible. Probably the only solution for Russians is to reduce the citadel to ruins, and it seems that according to the latest updates we've received today, it seems that this is exactly what the Russians are doing. The Russians understand that they're getting closer and closer to the Nikolaevka citadel, to this multi-story area, so which means that, and as you can see, there is a very, very short distance between one river and the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, so Russians will not be able to assault this territory with vehicles. It will be a very difficult situation for them. So that is why the Russians began reducing till ruins this area in advance, and this is exactly what we can see right now. So from this video we can see a Russian drone that was filming this heavy fortified area from the Ukrainian side, and as you can see, this territory hasn't been almost damaged, so the buildings are without more than damage, as you can see, which means that it will take time before Russians are able to break through this area and to answer the eastern parts of the city of Sloviansk. The settlement of Konstantinovka, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything when talking about changes. We have lots of videos, as you can see, but it seems that the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their position significantly. Today I have improved the range of dates, and so this is the picture, for example, about events that have been taking place in this area since the 1st of April of 2026. And according to this, let's say, this number of updates and this situation, we see that there are several gaps and several pockets completely untouched by the Russian artillery forces, FPV drones, and aviation. So we see that since the beginning of April of 2026, we haven't received anything from this pocket. So which means that the Russians, for some reason, are not attacking this territory, and during the previous months we haven't received anything from this area, which also means that maybe the Russians have already captured this pocket. We just haven't received anything that can prove this. Another important area without any artillery strikes or any videos is this territory between the southeastern parts of the city of Konstantinovka and the central industrial zone along the river of Bakhmutka or Kryvoi Tarets. Yes, this river Kryvoi Tarets. So during the same period of time since the beginning of April of 2026, we haven't received almost anything from this area as well. So as you can see, the strikes are taking place a bit further to the north and further in the northwestern direction, as well as for the southern parts. No strikes in this area since the beginning of the months, and we have lots of updates further in the northwestern direction. So these things tell us that most likely these two territories either under complete Russian control or probably about to be taken by Russians. Maybe the Russians are trying to keep this information in secret, and they're trying to finish the battle before the May holidays, which are going to take place very soon, and to make this announcement. But there are still lots of job to do, as you can see, for Russians, but this is a very interesting and very important situation. So we believe that most likely these two territories that we have colored with the black area is already under complete Russian control. Now let's move further and let's talk about the situation in the Zaporizhzhia, Dobropolye directions and so on. The Russians, according to information we have improved their positions to the north of the settlement of Grishina. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. Pro-Ukrainian sources published a video of how they were attacking Russians right exactly at this point, so which means that we have another proof that the Russians continue advancing further in the northern direction. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, the most important updates from different sources are coming from the area between the settlements of Novoselovka, Sichnyevo, Alexandergrad. The Russians are trying to concentrate a critical mass in the forest on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha, with the purpose then to attack further. So this is exactly the statement that was stated by pro-Russian sources. Units of the group of forces, units of the East troop grouping continued successful offensive actions in the specific directions. On the northern sector, the expansion of the control zone northwest of the settlement of Alexandergrad is ongoing. So this is the settlement of Alexandergrad, and this is exactly the area where the Russians are talking about. Is ongoing, and fierce battles continue in the forest area along the Volcha River, where the Ukrainians is actively defending. So the Russians are saying that currently there are very heavy clashes for this forest, and this is another statement from a very reliable pro-Russian source that they managed to cross the river of Volcha and that there are very heavy clashes right exactly on the edge of this big forest, and lots of things depend on the results of this battle. If Russians are able to force the Ukrainians to fall back, this is going to be a breakthrough. This is going to be a breakthrough with unpredictable consequences for the armed forces of Ukraine, who are located to the south of the river of Volcha, to the south of the settlements of Pokrovsk and Velika Mikhailovka. We have covered most of the updates about the situation in Ukraine. Probably just a few more interesting things. The Ukrainians, if you remember, several days ago attacked the settlement of Tuapse, and we still continue receiving updates and videos from this city. I would like to remind you that the Ukrainians, as a result of a massive attack, damaged and probably significantly damaged the Tuapse refinery. And in this video, we can see how civilians were making a video about the consequences. Another video was published today. This one here, we can see how civilians were moving through the city of Tuapse, probably for some of their purposes. And here we can see a very big and black smoke over the refinery, which means that indeed the Ukrainians managed to do significant damage. But once again, I believe that the Tuapse refinery was attacked with drones, not with those drones that were launched from the church of Ukraine, let's say, like according to this map that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. It seems that the Tuapse refinery was attacked with drones from the area of the Black Sea. Anyway, we believe that in coming days, sooner or later, we'll understand what is going to happen. But as of now, we are waiting for the continuation of the European mobilization. Very interesting to see how things are going to develop in this area on this matter. Now let's discuss the situation in the Middle East, and as we discussed, the Strait of Hormuz was blocked once again by the Iranian forces. During the day we received lots of updates. Iran will continue restricting ships traffic through the Strait of Hormuz and charge tolls during the ceasefire. Vessels must coordinate with the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which can still block ships from countries Iran considers hostile. Another important thing, commercial vessels are receiving radio warning from the ARGC Navy declaring the Strait of Hormuz closed and instructing ships not to transit the waterway. Iran has stated that it has once again closed the Strait of Hormuz, and the Strait of Hormuz was closed for the second time because, according to information we have, the United States of America hasn't removed the blockade of the Gulf of Oman. So I would like to remind you that several days ago the United States of America established a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman along this line, and later we received reports that parties managed to achieve agreements and to lift the blockades, but later we found out that the Iranians was the only side in this process that lifted the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The US blockade remained on its position. Furthermore, during the day we received lots of videos and updates of how the vessels and tankers from the Persian Gulf were trying to cross the Strait of Hormuz, but according to information we have, the Iranians attacked 2 or 3 vessels and forced them to return back. We have reported an incident 20 nautical miles northeast of Oman earlier today, where a tanker was approached by 2 gunboats that opened fire without issuing a warning. The vessels and its crew are reported safe, and authorities are investigating. We have a lot of updates on this matter. It's just Saturday, which means that tomorrow we will see the same picture, and probably somewhere at the beginning of 20th of April of 2026, when oil markets open, we'll see significant rise of oil prices, probably once again back to $100 per barrel. And the next time, very difficult to imagine what the United States of America are going to do with this. But one thing is clear, and one thing we know for sure, that the United States of America continue redeploying additional aircrafts in the direction of the Middle East, with the purpose to regroup their forces and to prepare the coalition before the beginning of another round of clashes in the Middle East. Furthermore, today we received the report that the clashes resumed in the southern parts of Lebanon, as we discussed during the previous video. Today, the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, stated that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire in Lebanon, but considers the operation against Hezbollah unfinished. Prime Minister Netanyahu said. He warned that Israel is preparing further action to address the remaining missile and drone threat. So I'm not sure about tomorrow, about Sunday, but obviously on Monday, on the 20th of April of 2026, we'll see a full-scale conflict there. But from the other side, another thing that proves that something is going to happen in the Middle East once again is that the US Treasury has authorized transactions involving Russian oil until May 16. The exemption covers oil and petroleum products loaded onto tankers before April 17th. So this is a very important situation because if you remember, several days ago, the US Treasury stated that the United States of America is not going to lift sanctions anymore from the US tankers and so on. We have these statements made by just 2 days ago that was stated by him, and now we see that he has changed his mind completely, which means that most likely, according to the original plan, the US authorities supposed that the Iranians will unblock the Strait of Hormuz forever. But due to these changes, the US realized that it seems that nothing is going to change. So that is why it's time to leave some sanctions on Russia once again, to take them off. This is the statement that was made by the Scott Bessent just several days ago, 2 days ago. We will not be renewing the general license on Russian and Iranian oil. And today he made a statement that the exemption covers oil and petroleum products loaded onto tankers before April 17. So this is the situation, which means that everything has changed significantly, and now the world will get probably Russian oil, which will also partially stabilize the market, which means that the coalition is once again can do everything they can in the Middle East with the purpose, from their side, from their understanding, to force the Iranians to accept the demands of the Western countries. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.